Hello and welcome to another episode of Weird Canadian Kid Shows. Today I'm talking about Yvon of the Yukon. I used to watch this show in secret because I always thought that it was a little bit too inappropriate. Even as a kid, I could acknowledge that this show felt like it was for older kids. Ugh. Watching it in hindsight, I don't think it was actually all that bad. Maybe just like kind of mild, gross out humor, like stuff that was probably intended for preteens, I guess. But not for younger kids, which is what I was when I watched it. I always felt like if my mom walked in the room and caught me watching it, she would make me turn it off. The premise of this show is that Yvon leaves France, and then he ends up traveling around in the Arctic, around Canada, and he gets frozen in ice, and then he gets thawed out in the present day, and then he is adjusting to modern life in the Yukon while still holding on to his old, French colonial identity, I guess. The theme song was catchy as hell.
Yvon of the Yukon, frozen by icy seas. Yvon of the Yukon, defrosted for you and for me.
It has some good gross out moments, but I don't think that there's anything particularly eye-catching about it. Holy fuck, those goddamn dump trucks outside. This was the kind of show, there's two reasons I watched it. One, for the previously stated reason, is that I thought that it was kind of inappropriate, so I felt kind of cool watching an older kid show. But I didn't really like it all that much, I recall. I remember it was one of those things where I'd put it on and I'd watch it because there was nothing else on, and I'd kind of be like, hey, like, I don't think I enjoyed the actual content of the show. I enjoyed the fact that I was watching something that felt intended for an older audience. One of my favorite episodes, I remember, like one I actually genuinely liked because I played hockey, was the episode where they get Yvon to play goalie and they stick a picture of the Queen behind him because he has, or the King, I think it's King Louis, and he has to protect it, because he has allegiance still to King Louis, I guess, and, he's a really bad goalie until they put the picture of the king behind him. This episode in particular, The Call of the Mild, was just one of the episodes that I watched in preparation for this video, just getting some research in. And yeah, like this is what I mean. Like this feels like it's intended for a preteen audience. You got a character who's going through puberty and like wondering about his body, and then you've got a bare ass, and I mean, God, that fucking dingy ass. I don't doubt for a second that this is actually what the Yukon's like, just a dingy, disgusting hellhole. Nah, I'm sure it's great. I think it's cool that a First Nations character is the lead. Yvon is a supporting character, despite the fact that he's front and center on the show, but he's like the comic relief character, and the episodes often center around the main character doing something with him. And I kind of take something back that I said. The animation isn't bad. It's just it just doesn't. It's not particularly interesting. I'm not looking at this and going like, wow, this is some fucking badass shit. I'm just like, This show makes me think of a lot of other shows of the time. So Canadian shows of the time, like it kind of gives me a Jacob Tutu vibe, despite the fact that I think Jacob Tutu has a much more interesting visual style. Just the kind of humor and kind of the gross out attitude. I don't know what the fuck was up with Canadian content in the early 2000s and just going for the jugular of disgust. Like it's just like there's so much potty humor, and I think that really influenced me. My mom recently moved, and she gave me a box that had like a bunch of my old like school projects and artwork and old little artistic projects that I worked on when I was a kid. And I was going through my old comic books, and like this is like from the 4th and 5th grade, so however old you are then, and I'm like writing about superheroes fighting living manure, and characters are always farting and vomiting, and there's a lot of blood, and there's always like shit stains everywhere, and characters are always saying something stinks, and there's always dinge in every panel that I'm drawing, like, and I was like, what the fuck was wrong with me? Like, why was my humor so vulgar and crass, and why did I grow up to be like an uncivilized swine who loves gross out humor? And it was Canadian kid shows. It was the shows that I was watching growing up, like Jacob Tutu. I'm pretty sure in the first episode has like a stink bomb, and there's always like green clouds of stink, and there's always like pimples being popped, like in 16 zombie episode, and back knee in 16. Now I'm talking about 16. Just fuck it. The Canadian kid shows were fucking revolting. They were just so filled with gross out humor. And then I mean, like, I'm sure this isn't isolated to Canada though. I'm sure this was just kid shows in general at the time. It was just like, how fucking gross can we make this for kids without it just being like for adults? How far can we take potty humor and, you know, just bathroom humor without it being too inappropriate? And that was the goal of children's shows of the time. I don't know. So Yvon of the Yukon is an alright show. I think the weirdest thing about it is how gross out it gets at times. I mean, it was intended for older kids. I'm just like, I don't know. It's not every day that you see a children's show have a boys' locker room scene where the walls are oozing slime and their fucking armpits are hairy, and you know they're talking about their butt muscles and
Deltoid, pectoid, adenoid, asteroid. I got them all!
Thanks for watching this episode of Weird Canadian Kid Shows. Gotta do something more fucked up next time.